I'm not really one to FOMO, but let's go ahead and enter a a long, right? So we just want to take I don't know, let's go order by cost like that. Let's just go ahead and do a 10. Let's do $100, and then that's like a 900 and something dollar value. We'll go ahead and we'll market order. This is that FOMO trade. We'll market order into a long with $100, and so $100 is going to serve as about $1,000. And then this could easily come back down, but because it's deviated enough, I think that this is kind of like a worth it, attempt. And I'll show you what I think is probably normally the smarter play. So normally the smarter play is you use this tool right here. You can use it on TradingView too. This is what I would do for entries. FIB retracement, and then you go from down here, basically the low side of a move to the top side of a move. And I usually use this on something like the 4 hour. You could use it on the 1 hour. So this is an example of the 1 hour. And if you hang out in the Platinum Setups group and you go and look at some of the content in there for like how to find entries, what we're kind of like saying is, instead of doing what I just did, I only did it to like make this video fun for you in the future, and just to kind of, because we had some deviation. But otherwise, what I would tell people is wait for this move to exhaust, and then usually you will have a retrace. And then these levels become like miniature pressure lines, right? That one there, this one here. And so what happens is a lot of them will go back to in crypto, a lot of them will go back to the 0.5, or they'll go to this 0.618. If you have a really strong trend, it's possible it goes up here and it comes back and then it goes up, right? So it bounces off that one. It's also possible that it goes just to the orange and goes up, right? If it's a really strong trend, breakout, beginning of a move, like those things are possible, but just much more often than not, and this is the part that requires patience, much more often than not, it goes to this 0.5 or 0.618. And so this is the one that could take hours. Like you go to work and then you just check on it later. Is generally like what I would recommend with that. And this is the one where I would normally take where am I? This one. It's a little different on the here versus TradingView. Yeah, so normally I would just look for my asymmetry, right? I would say, okay, I really kind of want to be in a trade. I think this is a good one. I think it's going to break out. I don't need to be ridiculous. This is going to be a pretty good move. I'm going to go ahead and do one trade like this, and it's going to be, see if I can make it larger. I'm going to do one trade like this, and it's going to be, one that based on, let me go back to this, right? Based on this chart here, where I actually have all my data, this 4 hour chart, I think it could conceivably at least go to this 37 cents. And so that would probably be my first take profit, right? I'm using that pressure line to know what to do on this other chart. So what I say, 37.16. So now I go over here, and I'm just gonna take the data and use it in that regard to set my targets, and even to like measure out my asymmetry, right? So 37.13. That's actually a ways up there, because I must have been on the other chart. So 37.13 is something like this, which is great. That's like the kind of move that I want to have. And so if it comes down to here, I will enter it, and that's where I will enter, and I'm willing to lose 3%, so I'll do a 3x leverage. If I'm willing to lose about 4%, I'll use a 4x leverage. And I'm just taking that from this number right here, right? If I'm gonna use 3x leverage, then I have to assume I'm gonna lose 3 times that. And if I'm gonna use 4x leverage, I'm gonna lose 4 times that. And if I'm using 10x leverage, then I need to be ready to lose more than 10% because it's 10 times that. But of course, the benefit is when I go over here, everything is also multiplied. That's fine. I just tend to focus on this first because capital preservation is number one. So, so that's that, right? Like that's the simple version of what I do with those. However, like I said, a lot of times it'll go back to the one below, right? The 0.618. And so that is where I will clone. You can right click this little risk reward ratio calculator and then just clone it, and it'll just basically carbon copy it. So now I have the same exact thing. And so now I can go over here and I can build a second one. And so I might say I'm going to enter it something like that. This one, I'm going to actually have higher leverage. It's an alt, so I'm willing to lose, but I'm going to 8x this one. And I have my little calculator here. So I go 59%, right? 59 pips, they call it, right? 59 out of 100. So 0.59 times 8. Okay, that's about 4.72. So with 4.72%, I'm comfortable with that. That was multiplied by 8. So if it gets down to here, I'm gonna go ahead and do an 8x trade. And that's how you use the leverage, right? Like here, it was a 10 risk reward. That's a simple checklist thing, right? Like I just want to make sure I have logic, and I want to make sure that it's at least 7. If I can get 7 or more, it's probably all right. So 7 or more is like, if I didn't even really fully understand it, that's kind of like the thing. It just means this is a trade that I'm looking at doing that is 7 parts reward per 1 unit of risk. Like if I lose 1. If I win, I win 7. So in this case, it's almost 11. So if I win 11. If I lose 1. So this one is 0.85. And so this one I might do like times 5. And so 0.85 times 5 is about 4.25. So as I look at that, I'd say, okay, I'm going to do that one at 5x leverage because with that amount of money, I'm willing to lose about 5%. And the other one I'm going to do, it's a little tighter of a stop loss, you'll notice, right? Which is why the asymmetry is 15 parts reward per unit of risk. I stand to lose a little bit less because it's a slightly tighter stop loss. And so because of that, I'm willing to leverage it a little more. And so I'm gonna shoot for 8. Now you could do it even higher, but those are I think some good round numbers with this kind of asymmetry. And then what I would also say, just it's been true in my experience, is just be really cautious if you find yourself using more than 15 asymmetry. Like if you plot something and you just find yourself like doing this, and you're like, yeah, and I think if I get it, it's going to go all the way to here. It's possible. Like, don't get me wrong, it's totally possible. But if you find yourself at 32, it might be overzealous on your target profit, or it might be too conservative and too tight on your stop loss, right? So usually one of those two things is probably the culprit. And so if you have good logic and you're being reasonable, anywhere between 7 and maybe as high as like 15 is like a good place to go. But rather than FOMOing in like I just did, using these FIB retracement levels, using the dots to know what direction to go, and then using these FIB retracement levels, if it goes down this low, you may not do it, but otherwise, yeah, using these FIB retracement levels is the best way to find an entry. I have found that usually the red is not a great one because you'll get stopped out. Usually the orange is not a great one. So usually you'll get stopped out, or you just need to protect your trade faster. And usually the best ones are this 0.5 and this 0.618. And so if you can't see them, I'm going to expand this so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It's these numbers when you're drawing it.
Would you enter both of those as conditional, and then if one hit, just take the other one, like close it out, or would you just pick one?
No, I mean, you could pick one or you could enter both. You could like set up a trade for both and just divvy your capital out a little differently. And if you wanted to do high leverage, like if you were ever tempted to do high leverage, I would just close this up a lot. Something like that. Not ridiculous, but kind of ridiculous because you just don't want to lose a lot, right? So that right there, 0.24, that's kind of a nice number to be at a 10x leverage because you'll probably lose the 0.24 times 10. So you're at 2.5. And then if you account for slippage and, whatever else, pretty much slippage, it's probably going to be closer to like 4%. And so that 0.24 is like a nice number to try to use logic for a 10x leverage. And then what you'd probably do that would be a little smarter too is just, unless you're really, really convinced it's the most incredible entry ever, is to be cautious with how much capital you use. And so this is kind of like, I think, a simple way to do this. And this is how I would enter. I would, if you couldn't help it, because I've been through this. So I would say, like, if for whatever reason you felt like, man, I just can't help it. I FOMO in and I wanted to try the one that was a little higher, right? I wanted to try the red. And so you can't help it and you FOMO in here, then I would just do this with the lowest leverage and the lowest capital. If you just want to watch money move and be ready to, protect your profits. And then I would do this one with slightly higher capital. Still not a serious trade because I just don't like entering at the red or orange. I feel like it almost always retraces further. So this would be like, okay, you could use a little higher capital. You'd probably at a minimum have a little time to protect it. But all in all, you'd still want to be really careful. And then when it came to like really, really doing a trade, I would say like my real trades would be based on this line and this line. And if I really believed that this was a good move, kind of like we just did, we thought like, oh, this is probably going to be something that people will notice and start to, potentially enter positions on this little, what do you call it, Cardano breakout. Then all you do here, and you may already do this, but again, this is what I was talking about when I say saving you money in general. It's like, this is a little dangerous, right? Because we have good logic for like why we jumped into it as a market order, but knowing that crypto almost always retraces to this line or this line, even after nice breakouts. Like even if this gets done and it goes up here somewhere, right? Let's just say it goes here. What normally happens is there's a place of exhaustion, and that's the only thing that changes is that's where you draw this from. You're like, okay, I see where it finally stopped. And so that's where, that's now where I'm really, really gonna, base my logic off of. And so now that I have that, I know that my real entries are gonna be here at this one, redrawn from the real peak, not just this initial early part, but redrawn from wherever it really hits exhaustion. That's okay, cool. So that's going to be my first attempt, and I'll probably have it wider, right? Because 30 is a little crazy. So, a great asymmetry. And then based on reality, what did I say? 37.14 was like where the real number is. So based on where the real pressure line is and a reasonable but yet really good asymmetry of 10, I'm willing to lose 0.72 is a reasonable stop loss. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it at like 4x leverage because I do the math and 0.72 times 4 is 3%. Now all I got to figure out is I'm willing to lose 3% of how much money. And then I can kind of decide on my trade. And so so that's really like I think the way to do it. And if this one didn't work, as I mentioned, I feel like the other very, very common entry or place that it goes to, and you might want to be just above the line, right? It's actually greedy to be there and to be that tight, right? Like that's a form of greed. And so by being just a little higher and then giving away a little more, you're kind of like, in a way, outperforming the greedy traders just by not being greedy. They will get stopped out and you will not. And then you'll be in your trade. And then, somewhere up here, when it just gets like this high on a 3x, you're like, wow, I'm at 18% on my ROI. This is great. And then what you'll find out is this thing with the fib retracement and the dots doing what they do, it actually works out like very often.